isolated. Conspiracy theories, now conspiracy facts. Thought crimes condemned like terroristic attacks. Every time you take a breath, you pay another tax. Every time you take a step, it's documented and tracked. It's whack how we're living, the planet's a prison. You should've listened up and questioned 9/11. Declare a revolution, defend our constitution. A public execution of corrupted institutions. Destruction by design, prophesizing every script. Take a big step back, see the whole picture. A distraction of the mind to keep you living in a bubble. We're in a lot of trouble.
Mercury-containing vaccines may help, not harm kids. According to if China were to revalue its currency, or China is to start making, say, toys that don't have lead in them or food that isn't poisonous, their costs of production are going to go up, and that means prices at Walmart here in the United States are going to go up too.
People out there in our nation don't have that, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa.
First, a Fox News alert: coalition forces have discovered 500 chemical munitions in Iraq.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack.
How is Ron Paul's number so high? Clearly, some online communities are messing with the outcome.
Live, all hell is breaking loose on 6th Avenue. You need a permit to protest or demonstrate here in New York. But this anarchist group came forward. They really are one of the least attractive groups of demonstrators I've ever seen. One of the leaders, I guess, if violence breaks out, don't worry, we can handle it. Our Fox News team can take this bunch of, I don't want to use any foul language, but...
And welcome back to Truth Frequency, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Chris Gio, and I'm joined by the lovely, lovely socio student. And we are airing a pre-recorded interview with the anti-terrorist. What we did was submit questions to him, and he sent us back audio answers. The reason for that, of course, is to protect his identity. If you didn't catch it earlier in the interview, you really should download the podcast and listen to it. He explains that with his job, if they were to find out his identity, he could be compromised very, very bad. So I get the feeling that he is a source from the inside, and he's coming out and speaking out, and I have nothing but respect for the soldiers, for the cops, for anybody on the inside who comes out and speaks out. So right now, let's go to another question. Socio, why don't you tell us what that next question is, because it's right up your alley.
Okay. The next question was, can you tell us a little bit about the H1N1 hoax? Do you feel it's for profit, for control, maybe both? And where do you see them going with it?
As far as H1N1 is concerned, I suspect it's probably for both profit and control. The potential for staggering profits that benefit pharmaceutical companies and the government's influence by them are certainly apparent once you start to take into account the overwhelming evidence and the historical precedents. But the bottom line is, with the statutes that have been put in place in the last 10 years, anyone who refuses to take the vaccine will be arrested as a terrorist and committed to internment camps. And once branded as a terrorist, you have little or no recourse.
Also, there have been a lot of different laws passed in the last 5 years alone, like the PREPA Act, that's the Pandemic Readiness and Emergency Preparedness Act of 2006, that basically gives the pharmaceutical companies immunity for anything that happens from the results of any flu vaccine that they create. There's no recourse for us at all as far as, helping our children when they get hurt by the shot to get taken care of. The next question was, do you feel the vaccine is an attack on the immune system to prepare the victims for another attack? Is it a two-part bioweapon, in other words?
It's interesting you should ask this question in just this way, because I received a very interesting take on all of this from a trusted colleague in the field of immunology recently. Last month, he got his hands on a vial of vaccine headed for Eastern Europe and analyzed it in his off-work hours. What came up was viable Yersinia pestis, also known as pneumonic plague, and viable simian virus 40, which was implicated in the AIDS outbreak in Africa in the 80s, if you recall. The message I received from him read as follows. What if the YPS40 is in the solution to protect the sheep from the next wave of pandemic that will wipe out all the difficult ones? It could be a clever method to separate the pliable from the unconditioned, After all, where's the logic in killing off all the people who quickly and without question line up for their shot? Isn't it more logical to effect the opposite, corner the non-compliant into a no-win scenario? What if this whole Ukraine thing is a sort of flytrap for the dissidents? So who is left after the supposed antiviral-induced plague in this scenario? A healthy population of anti-government sovereign souls who self-filtered themselves by being the ones who refused the vaccine. I suspect that's what they want. They want the disobedient to die. End quote. It's a very interesting theory, I'm sure you'll agree. But I want to make it clear that that's all it is. No one is suggesting that you should go out and get the H1N1 vaccine. This particular immunologist is against vaccines, as am I. He is simply pointing out that it would be an ingenious way of separating the dissidents from the compliant. As you can probably surmise, the game's being played on multiple levels that are changing all of the time. In my opinion, what we need to do is to take the evidence and come to the conclusion that serves us best on an individual level. My particular take is that the elite definitely do not have my best interest at heart, and never have. And I would assert that you're all in a similar position.
And we are definitely in a similar position, ladies and gentlemen. The elite do not have our best interests at heart. We can all agree on that, no matter what the division is. And when the dividers come and say, no, we can't agree on that, well, then we know to point them out as government ops. But anyways, back to the question that we were talking about. What do you think about that, Socio?
We're all in the same damn boat, and it is sinking fast. And, you know, the whole problem with the vaccine thing is that I think they've overblown it to the point where people just don't give a fuck anymore.
I don't really care anymore. I've heard so much of it.
I've heard so much about it. I'm swine flued out.
Exactly.
I really am. There's a real good YouTube video made by OEF. Is it OEF OS Soldier or something like that? But if you'll find him if you look it up on YouTube. He says, you know, until I see somebody, you know, dying in front of me with blood coming out of every orifice in their body, and, you know, until that happens, I'm not going to bat an eye.
I've been telling you this for, never mind, I'll tell you off air. Anyways, we asked him about the free man philosophy, and I'm sure many of you know we had Robert Menard on the show last week, so I suggest everybody gets the podcast and listen to it because it was a great show. But I know the anti-terrorist goes into a little bit about that, so we asked him what are some of his influences and teachers, and here was his reply.
At this time, I'd recommend listening to Dr. Sam Kennedy on Republic Broadcasting Radio, and Winston Shrout, of course. But the chap who embodies most of what I stand for would be Brandon Alexander Adams. He's right out there on the front lines doing it, and he's achieving great things by all accounts. You'll find links to their materials on the AT website. I think a full understanding of both paths, the freeman route and the commercial redemption route, is required before you choose which one to take. It's just common sense, really. I hope you'll see everything I say as common sense. If it's not common sense, it's not the simplest, most effective answer, in my opinion. In either case, I'd recommend taking a few LSATs, law school admission tests online. Familiarize yourself with the language they'll try and use to cage you or trip you up. If you want to be free, you need to become a student of the law. To become a student of the law, you need to learn to read legalese. Remember, you're dealing with a feudal system which is a lie and a fraud out of necessity from the beginning. You have to become an expert as a law merchant and understand the international laws of commerce, where everything is trust agreements and offers and counteroffers. And I can assure you I am no expert. I'm still studying, as are all of the other people out there teaching this stuff. The information on commercial redemption is appearing and disappearing and evolving all of the time. It's very difficult to stay on top of all of it, unless you're on the front lines. And I am not. As far as being a free man on the land is concerned, I don't think anyone embodies that quality, or those qualities, more than Robert Menard. He's certainly on the front line, and he's leading the way. Even if you're not ready to check out of the system and fully commit to that particular path, you would be doing yourself a good service by following his example in terms of the way he handles himself as a sovereign. Remember, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, then it's surely a duck. If you walk, talk, and act as a slave, the system will treat you accordingly. Having said that, you can act like a sovereign all you like, but your identity, as evidenced by your country of birth and your citizenship, is your Achilles heel. You can't really be free, a free man on the land, until you successfully disassociate yourself from your person, until you challenge and dissolve the contract you signed that has you in voluntary servitude. But you have to be in a good position to be able to do that. If you're on unemployment benefits and receiving housing benefits and food stamps, you're in no position to leap into responsibility. unless you're able to spend a few years sofa surfing and having your friends support you while you get back on your feet. The bottom line is this: if you're receiving any benefits or privileges from the state, you're not free. Know and understand exactly who you are. Know what your law is. If it's the thousands of arbitrary and conflicting man-made laws, statutes, that can and will change on a political whim, then freedom's not for you. Freedom's won on a personal level. No one can do it for you. You have to take steps to gain your own freedom through personal education and action. As someone famous once said, the surest way for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. In doing nothing, you've got no cause to complain when evil rears its ugly head. You have to fully understand the dangers of accepting and using the fictional name, your name.